So before explaining our third method, I want to just make some changes or categorization to the pending data methods. So if we are gonna define from data source, whether this was a service or API or even code, the component itself, I will call it data source. So from data source to the view or the template itself, there is some bending methods, famous bending methods are used, uh, or this is the, or we can say this is the first category, if we can so. So the first category is related from the data source to view, and we have another one from view to data source, and the final one is two-way bending, is two-way. Okay, so I will leave them right this from the data source to the view. We have the interpolation method. Okay, this is the first property binding method and attribute binding, attribute binding plus binding style, and so on. This all of this is from the data source to the view itself. So but from the data source, from the view to the data source, we have the event binding. Event binding is, we will discuss it in this tutorial, in this section, if we can say so. And then we have the two-way binding, is it's called the two-way, vice versa. It's called from the view to data source and from data source to view and all of this. So let's start with another one, with another binding method, which I will say let's start with attribute binding. So we will start with this section with attribute binding, and we covered the interpolation, the property, and here we go with the attribute binding. Okay, let's open our code and see how can this attribute binding work. As I said, this is some kind of attribute binding, but yeah, looks like an attribute binding, but it's not an attribute binding. So I will just copy this to here, and I will say our third method is attribute binding method. So how it attribute binding method? Let's say, do you remember what's the call span? Call span? Remember it? So how it look like the call span? Call span is, how can I say, in Excel is like merging, and how can we define this column to how many cells it will take? So if we define the call span with 2, it will take 2 cells. So it's like merging cell 1 and cell 2. This is the simplest and easiest way I can explain the call span with. So let's see how can call span be used as attribute binding. First, I will use without attribute binding, and then we will use attribute binding to see how's call span this thing. So I will start with opening W3 School. As you know, I love very much going to references and going to where can I say the information itself. So I'll search for the cold span, cold span, TD cold span. This is how we use the cold span. So let's try to say this. I'll take this example. Sorry, I'll say as I said, it's like merging things. So let's take that example, that table, and I will use it simply as this. I'll use it in our way. Let's remove this, and this is a table. I'll save it. So let's add some CSS. I'll take the CSS exists in the example. So this is the border style. I'll add it to the app component CSS, and I'll say okay, save, and let's see. Here we are. Here's our table. So there is no color span here, huh? Let's add it. I just wanted to show you how color span works. So as you see, it's now merged or spanned the two cells. That cell is now is represented in a two cells, or somehow it's merged. So as I said, if we want to change this value to a predefined value or from a variable or so, here it comes where we are using or we will use the attribute binding way. So let's see how can we do it. So first of all, I want to know how exactly what I'm searching for is written. So maybe coolspan is the attribute name is like this. So I will to write an attribute, I like attr dot coolspan, and I will make it like this. We are circling it with square brackets. Here we are using the attribute binding method, and here we write the exact variable name we want. So we will call it call span. And here call span is defined, we define it in the app component as let it equal to the same value. So I'd expect that no change will happen in the binding method. So that's it. Refresh again, and I'll click Shift and F5 to refresh and clear this cache, getting the newest version. And here we are, we use call span equal to, and this value is the value I got from the database itself.